Welcome to the latest episode of the Edgar Burroughs mini podcast. These short podcasts are meant to supplement the full length episodes that I do with Scott Stewart and Jess Terrell, in which we generally talk about one of Edgar Burroughs' books in detail. My name is Tim DeForest. I'm the author of several books about what I call pre-digital pop culture, things like the pulp magazines that Burroughs was published in, old-time radio, classic comic books, old B movies, and so on. And I keep a blog about such things at Comics, Old-Time Radio, and other cool stuff. Currently, we're using the mini podcast to do a chapter-by-chapter analysis of the 1912 novel A Princess of Mars. Today, we'll be doing Chapter 3. Please note that we will be including spoilers for this chapter and occasionally for later novels in the series. And I would also recommend that you reread this chapter before listening to the podcast, because I will be assuming you're familiar with the events we discuss. Now, this chapter begins by bringing John Carter to Mars. And it's interesting that he instinctively knows he's on Mars. It's an indication of something that will become more and more obvious as the novel progresses, that Mars, not Earth, is his true home. Now, he's definitely an Earthling. We see that because of the way his muscles work on Earth. But Mars is the place where he belongs, where he feels like he belongs. Burroughs very quickly establishes that it is indeed an alien environment, most obviously by the effect of the lower gravity. I do like that Burroughs handles this with realism. John Carter needs time to get used to his new ability to jump huge distances. And I enjoy that at one point he has to use the very unheroic method of creeping along until he gets used to walking again. He also meets the Green Martians, which of course adds more to the alienness of the situation. Seeing the big-headed little babies before the adults adds to the alien bizarreness. Now, though it will be a chapter or two before we first hear the names, the Green Martians are Tharks, the name of their tribe, and the eight-legged beasts they ride are called Thoats. Now, the Green Martians are just one of my favorite aliens in all of science fiction. Burroughs comes up with an imaginative physical design for them, which has been the source of many wonderful illustrations. They're truly awesome looking. And the world building he does with them, giving them a warlike society that has lost touch with the softer emotions, makes them an effective enemy at first. And later, as we'll see, John Carter's friendship with Tars Tarkas allows the Tharks to believably become awesome allies. I do want to say that my wife, Angela, who's reading this book for the first time, as I reread it, thought of the Apaches when she read about the Green Martians. And I think that's an interesting comparison. There are definitely ways you can parallels between the Tharks and the Apaches. And in 1927, Burroughs, who was very familiar with Apache culture, wrote an excellent Western titled The War Chief about the Apaches. And we discussed this in one of the full-length podcasts, which I would recommend you listening to when you have a chance. Now, John Carter does jump ahead a little bit in giving us information he would only learn later. He doesn't try to run from the Tharks in part because he sees they have rifles. And he mentions something he later learns, that these rifles have explosive bullets and, quote, wireless finders and sighters, which, unquote, which I think we can now consider to be radar sights. And their effective range is something like 200 miles. Now, the science fiction writer L. Sprague de Camp, who I should mention did not care for the John Carter stories for several reasons, once wondered if Burroughs later regretted giving his Martians those rifles, since most fights and most full-scale battles usually end up being hand-to-hand affairs. In fact, many of the isolated civilizations that are the settings of later books in the series don't have firearms at all, which does indicate that Burroughs might have occasionally considered them a block to the stories he wanted to tell. But I think Burroughs does a good job of establishing the nature of Mars's warlike cultures. It is a world in which everyone loves a good fight, and going hand to hand, even in massive battles, can be said to be ingrained on their DNA. An Earth general examining Martian tactics might pull out his hair in frustration, but for a Martian, these tactics are as natural as breathing. Now, John Carter's jumping ability convinces the Green Martians to bring him back alive. Now, we should note that through all of this, John Carter kept a level head and never, even for a moment, freaks out over anything he sees. This is an indication both of his bravery and the fact that Mars is indeed his true home. Though Angela, when reading this, really did feel that John Carter should have had a what the heck moment with all of this, that he should have had a moment of being just completely freaked out by what he was seeing, even if his bravery did allow him allow him to pull himself together without any real panic. And that's a fair remark to uh, a fair opinion to have. But I do think that it is supposed to be an indication that even though he doesn't know anything about Mars yet, Mars will turn out to be the place where he's supposed to be. And perhaps subconsciously he already knows that. That's it for now. Once again, my name is Tim DeForest. Please visit my blog at Comics Old Time Radio and other cool stuff. You'll also be able to find links to my Amazon.com author page there. Thank you for listening. We'll be back with another mini podcast soon. And keep an ear out also for our full length episode.